Why play MMO solo by Josh Strife Hayes? Sorry, readjusting mic.
What is an MMO RPG? A question asked by scholars and philosophers alike. How do we define this genre? This question is actually so volatile and divisive in the MMO community,
I love ESO. However, I feel like it's become very much a shadow of itself from my first experience with it. Yeah, this new version of ESO, I don't know what to make of it. They're nerfing shit that doesn't need to be nerfed, but they're doing it in place of so that they can create new metas with new, like, what do you call them? New class builds and everything. And I think that that's a real shitty way to go about doing that kind of thing. But yeah, I haven't played in a really long time. That's pretty sad when I really think about it, with how much money I spent on that game and like how long I have spent in that game and everything. That's really sad. Let's go back. Sorry.
This genre. This question is actually so volatile and divisive in the MMO community, it really needs its own series of videos split over several specific topics. So let's do that. Let's dive into this fascinating genre and really ask, what is it? From the acronym MMORPG itself, to the games we know as MMORPGs, to the games we describe as MMOs which aren't quite. What are we actually talking about? Quick note, this video is kindly sponsored by Guild Wars 2, which is definitely an MMORPG, unlike Guild Wars 1, which is an online RPG.
So the only thing that I know about Guild Wars 2, which is really funny, because I didn't know about this game because of Josh Strife Hayes. Apparently this is the game that he will always, and probably the only game that he will recommend to anyone who wants to try an MMO. And he has a lot of reasons for it and everything. I remember seeing a video of him talking about such. But yeah.
What's the difference? Let's find out. As always, thank you to the supporters on Patreon who allow me to keep making these videos.
Holy shit.
Several YouTubers far smarter than me have already made excellent videos examining what an MMORPG even is, from breaking down the acronym to analysing games that we would commonly describe as MMORPGs. And while we've made some advancement into working out what the hell this genre even is, there's only two things we really, as a community, agree on. One, Steam doesn't know what an MMO is, because the MMO tagged games are always quite strange. And two, an MMO is a game in which there is a fishing minigame. That's about as far as we've got. As for why fishing specifically, Adam Millard has a brilliant video on why so many games turn to that exact thing. If you're interested in game design, go and give it a watch. I'll link it in the description. But
oh, that's cool. That's cool, because I never did really wonder. I just thought, like, yeah, who goes outside to fish nowadays? Why don't you just like stay indoors on your favorite video game where you can literally what do you call it, vicariously live through your characters and everything? But that's hilarious. The funny thing was I was a deep sea fisherman and everything. And yeah, what did I do whenever I got home on my off trips for 6 weeks? Played ESO and went fishing so that I can make 12 to 13,000 gold the moment I get 100 fish. It's more than that even. I think I went up to like 25k. But yeah, these were back in the days. These times might be different with that. Obviously, we're talking about when you break down the fish and everything, you're looking at perfect row. Yeah.
Beyond fishing, what is an MMORPG? Well, the acronym stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. So I wanted to break this down and examine each bit individually. How massive? Multiplayer in what context? Is it always online? And what level of freedom is given within the RPG aspect? Some games we would know as MMORPGs aren't necessarily massive. Some of them don't even require multiplayer. Some of them aren't even always online. But while I was writing a brief outline of all the important points I wanted to cover in this rather long topic, I saw this tweet by Mrs. Stix, retweeted by MMO Byte. The original tweet reads, "Why do we like MMOs so much if we keep playing it like a single player?" And MMO Byte replies, "It's such an unusual direction to take the genre, making it solo-friendly, less massively multiplayer. I think soon we're going to see MMORPGs simply become online role-playing games." The interesting aspect of that reply is he left out the MM, massively multiplayer. So if encouraging solo play of a multiplayer game is enough to justify changing the acronym, then the multiplayer element must be a core design pillar of this genre. This seemed like a good place to start exploring. I'm not saying MMO Byte is right or wrong in his reply, it's just a solid starting point. Because is it a different direction? Or has this aspect actually always been there? Before we look at whether older MMORPGs even allowed solo play, never mind encouraged it, we have to ask a simple question of why would someone want to play solo? MMORPG, massively multiplayer, a genre which prides itself on giving you the ability to play with millions of other people, players from all around the globe. Why would anyone choose to take on a multiplayer adventure on their own?
Okay, so like that is a pretty good question and everything. From a game designer like point of view and everything, why would you, put this out to your audience and everything if the premise of your game is to be rated as an MMO? And it's certainly interesting. I'm trying to find a way to like really answer it in my own way. I would actually I have no way that I can really speak of. All I can say is from my own experience, and that is it's being in a world where you can like talk to other people and everything. I think that kind of connection is best for the MMO point of view and everything. Just like you have that option to where you can literally talk to the person beside you, and obviously ESO Elder Scrolls Online was my main game for any MMO and everything, and in that game, you can do a mission and everything, and they do have missions which are multiplayer friendly and everything. So you can do the same mission as someone else, and like you can kind of be in the same instance sense as them and everything. Yeah, like because I've done that a bunch of times and everything with this game, with ESO. But yeah, I am curious. Let's go back a bit and then see what he has
Why
to
would
say.
anyone choose to take on a multiplayer adventure on their own?
Pardon me.
Well, the answer's pretty simple. It's because you want to. The gameplay of an MMO is usually a fantastical adventure, broken down by slow, monotonous grinding between the exciting bits, leveling skills or killing the same enemy again and again. And while it can be nice to have company during these long stretches of repetition, it's not always wanted. People enjoy doing lots of things by themselves. I like real-time strategy games, but I also like playing against the computer. I like Unreal Tournament against bots. I like painting Warhammer by myself. All things which are considered boring and repetitive by some, and which could likely be improved by sharing the experience with someone else. But here's the thing. I do share those experiences with other people when I want to. If I want to play multiplayer games with other people, I will. Or if I want to paint models with other people, I will. The important thing is, I have the choice. When someone says they enjoy playing MMO games solo, it doesn't necessarily mean they avoid all human contact at all costs.
It could also be that like the game is actually just really good. Some MMOs have really good missions and everything, and obviously like people they want to play those. Like they see their favorite streamers play certain missions and everything, and like, oh my god, that's so interesting. Like, you could really go a bunch of different ways with that. I might get this game, and so they get the game and they only play it solo and everything, which is perfectly fine. Because if a game can stand on its feet with the solo players, I think it's good. Like it's still good nonetheless. So there's a feature that like other people can harass you and everything. If you're a solo player, you clearly do not give a fuck about what anyone else says or has to say about you. You just mute them. Like seeing shit like that happen all the time. Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean they avoid all human contact at all costs. It usually means they prefer to enjoy the game either alone or with a closer, more specific group of friends, because those friends enjoy the game in the same way they do, either focusing on the lore, the mechanics, or min-maxing. It's important to not simply have a large player base for the...
So, going back to my time with ESO, I think I bought my friends ESO and everything because I didn't get that far in the actual game. It's just I found a mechanic which I thought like, holy shit, yo, if me and my friends can like join me with this and everything, we might be able to like do some things. And so yeah, I think I can't remember if I bought them the game or if they just bought the games on themselves and everything, but there's a piece in the game where it's the war system between the three factions. And so yeah, we were trying out like catapults and everything against the wolves and all that kind of shit, you know, just like trying shit like that out. And I was telling them about the times when me and a few guild members and everything, we would like try and do our best to get so far behind enemy lines. And it's a small unit of us and everything, and we would just start claiming territory behind enemy lines and everything. And when you do stuff like that, you can take away certain places from what's it called, the teleporting function and everything. So it's a very sneaky way of like cutting off your enemies' advancements and everything, which I think is just hilarious, especially when you do it right as well. Oh my god, there was only certain hours which we could do it because obviously, yeah, like most MMOs, they go on the realm of you know, people go to sleep and everything. People aren't just playing the MMO 24/7. So like you can find certain moments where like people are definitely lacking. And so yeah, we just took advantage of stuff like that.
Sake of having a large player base if you don't actually interact with them. A fun play group who enhance the game for you is worth far more. Playing an MMO can often be a relaxing hobby, while constant interaction with people can be a draining hobby in both the real world and the virtual. Sometimes you just want to come home from a day surrounded by people and go and exist in a fantastical virtual world by yourself. Yes, there are other people also in this world, but that's actually a calming element of it, because you don't need to spend energy interacting with them, it's just nice to have them there. Other players are acting as free-thinking, feeling background characters, framing your own adventure, lending the world weight and reality. Shit. Knowing that your actions affect a living world without the emotional effort of constantly needing to be social in that world is enjoyable.
There's a necromancer build anyway, so he's
with a
gaining
group
health.
Means you will have certain expectations, requirements of you. You'll have to keep up with any chat that's going on or play your class. You have a role to fulfill and you can't let your team down, and that's pressure. Sometimes you want to experience the gameplay of an MMORPG, the world, the music, the characters, the lore, the story, or the mechanics, without that pressure of feeling like you need to fulfill a role in a team. You can have the game on in the background while you watch a film, watch Netflix, read a book, or even do some work, or most likely what you're doing right now, which is watching some YouTube videos. It can be nice to experience the MMORPG without the pressure that being in a team puts on you. Whatever your favourite MMO is, it can always be played in the background. And if you aren't playing an MMO right now, consider downloading this video's sponsor, Guild Wars 2. This is the second video of mine that Guild Wars 2 have sponsored quite recently, which makes me think the management team have finally found the marketing team hiding in a long-forgotten office somewhere or just playing jumping puzzles all day and are demanding they actually start doing their job and sponsoring some YouTubers or something. I've played Guild Wars 2 since it launched all the way back in 2012, and it's been one of the few MMOs I've installed on every PC I've had since then, and finally, after like 5 years of coming soon, it's actually released on Steam. They've even released 2 very positive reviews. The latest expansion, End of Dragons, brings a ton of new content without invalidating the previous expansions Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, but you don't need to buy anything to try the game. There is a massive free trial. The base game is free with no time limit, and if you do like it, it is a one-time purchase with no monthly sub. Once you own Guild Wars 2, you own it. And given the amount of hours I've got out of this game, Guild Wars 2 is probably the best value money I've ever spent on a video game. To celebrate the Steam launch, there's a link in the description. You can sign up, get a code, and grab the game on Steam, and then if you want, you can redeem the code for an experience boost pack, some karma boosting, and a 10-slot bag with a mini pet. This all saves you about $10, and it's free, so there's no reason not to. There's a new player guide on the website, although the in-game tutorial is actually really good. There's great build variety in the classes, and the mount system is so good it is now the standard by which other games are to be judged. Now, regular viewers will know that I don't accept sponsorships unless I can personally vouch for the product, and honestly, Guild Wars 2 is just a really good MMORPG game with a great deal of content that every player should at least try. Right, back to talking about solo MMO.
Okay, he definitely knows how to sell the game. That game is on my list of games to like try out and everything. I am curious about it. I don't know anything about it, which I think that is a good thing whenever like new games and all. But yeah, even though it's somewhat regurgitating like the same kind of things that's been said in like the trailers and everything like that. Yeah, if you have a good, solid thing to sell, well then it practically sells itself. That's a good fucking sponsor. Holy shit.
MMO gameplay. When I play MMORPGs on stream, I often have people following me around, but I would still consider myself a mostly solo player, despite the fact I enjoy dungeons and team-based events. So how does that work? Well, the simple fact that I'm playing with people doesn't mean that I'm interacting with them or connecting to them in any meaningful way, and I think it's this lack of meaningful connection to other people that people often confuse with the lack of multiplayer elements. There is a long-held belief that newer MMORPGs are pushing people more towards solo-focused play. You exist in a world with other people, but you don't necessarily interact with them.
Well, I think that it's always been that way. I haven't really known of a game which has came out and it was 100% based on the multiplayer aspect of their video game. I'm of course talking about whenever it came to fantasy games and everything, because there are games that are pretty much MMOs that, well, are they MMOs? What do you call them? The shooter like games and everything. I would still consider those, some of those like MMOs and everything. And yeah, like obviously they are heavy dependent on like your teammates and everything. Like Foxhole, to be specific. I fucking love Foxhole, but clearly it is based whenever you are trying to steal ground from your enemy and everything. There is no way you can solo that shit. And if you do, then you're such a madman. Yet in that game, there is still features which allow you to play the game solo. You can create ammunitions for the front line. You can what's it called? You can like do all that kind of stuff, like refining materials, building stuff, just stuff like that. And then, yeah, the multiplayer aspects is really good too. You become a medic and like heal your teammates and everything. And yeah, just like it's fucking great. That would probably be the only game that I really know of that purely focuses on the multiplayer aspect more than what do you call it, thin solo play and everything. But even that, it still has solo play options, and I would kind of consider that the minority in all aspects because of the fact that it is a war game and everything, and like yeah, it is a massive team versus another massive team. I mean, I'm unsure if like most other video games like really do take that kind of route, except for other games that are clearly like it and everything. I don't know. Does WoW, World of Warcraft, have like? I think they do have faction based like systems and everything, but are they war like? Do they have a war like? Because in ESO, the war aspect of their video game is separate from the video game. So you can still go to any of the other what do you call it? Any of the other factions and everything, which was recently done. Well, it's probably not recently anymore, but well, I played that game when it first came out and everything, and that wasn't a thing that they had just then. Where you can be a part of a different faction, but you can go do the missions from another faction instead. They didn't have systems like that back when it first came out. But yeah, just like I said, their war faction is different from the overall game and everything. It's there if you want to join it. But yeah.
I've even made a video called Social to Solo, where I look at how the design philosophy has changed over the years, allowing people to experience the games solo. But were older games actually more cooperative? Did they demand more teamwork, or do people simply remember them as more cooperative because hanging out with people online was novel for the time, so people did that aspect more? The massively multiplayer part is a major point of contention within the MMORPG community. What is massive? It's not quantified, it's far too vague. From games designers to players, we don't know what you want massive to count as. 1,000 players? 10,000? 100,000? A million? Or 10 million? If you
So I consider it as somewhat a part of both an MMO, the massive part and everything. I consider that to be a part of like anywhere over 50 people, and a map that is big enough, or zones. Like, I don't care the fact that ESO is pretty much all made up of different zones and everything, except for when you get into the war, which is another reason why I really do like the war system in their game, because the zone it's so massive, it's so big and everything, and yeah. But yeah, I'm unsure like how everyone else really sees massive multiplayer, like the actual abbreviation of the letters and everything.
count a million players as massive, can I have a million people on my friends list? Could I have an ignore list a million players long? Will there ever be a zone where you could actually have a million players all at one time? Could you even interact with a million if you wanted to? If you have a number higher than the amount of players a single player could realistically be expected to engage with at any one time, is that enhancing your player base, or is that simply padding it out? How big is massive, and how big does massive need to be for the players to actually notice? Old school RuneScape has hundreds of thousands of active players, so it could rightfully be called a massively successful game, and it's definitely multiplayer, but each individual world holds up to 2,000 people, meaning even if you had every single player on a given world in the same space, you'd only be interacting with a tiny fraction of the total player base at any one time, and you wouldn't likely be able to form any meaningful connection with any one of them in the mass of players. The Elder Scrolls Online has its mega servers, shards, all existing simultaneously, but instead of showing you every player around you, it has phasing, where you'll always see enough players for the world to feel full, but never so many you feel overwhelmed, which makes it easier to form connections. But is this still massive if you're experiencing a curated version of the player base? Is the word massive more about the reality of who you interact with in the game or the greater community around the game. If the majority of your game is dungeons and raids with say 5, 10 or 25 people in a raid, are you actually interacting with 25 people? Or are you interacting with thousands of people in groups of 25 at a time? Or are you interacting at all? Does a dungeon run with no connection to another player even count as interaction?
This is Solitude, is it not? I just seen the headsman's when he just like looked over in that direction. I haven't been to this part of the map and everything. That's fuzzy. I'm definitely not an in-game level player when it came to ESO and everything. I just what am I when it comes to I think I'm a grinder. No, a farmer? I don't, to be honest, with how long I spent in that video game, I cannot say for definite what I was when I was in that game. All I remember, like, the guilds that I was, like, a part of and everything. And they were mainly, like, social guilds or RP guilds, or some of them wanted to go for, like, the main treasures and everything. Like, I didn't really care about that, but I was still down for the ride every now and then if, like, a few of my friends in the guilds wanted to do that shit. So I still have, like, I have a ridiculous amount of trophies in that game because of how many times that happened. But yeah. Continue.
Close to a random player in a random group as you are to a stranger you walk alongside while walking through town, or someone sat 2 seats behind you on a roller coaster. Just because you're going on the same journey doesn't mean you're taking the journey together. MMOs are often broken down into the styles of theme park versus sandbox. Would going to a theme park alone count as interacting with everyone at the park? Could you say you've had a multiplayer experience? And should anyone be stopped having that experience if they are alone? Most often it's less about the potential of who you could interact with and more about who you actually do interact with. A small group of 5 to 10 friends talking and adventuring together will feel a lot more social and connected than 500 players silently running the same dungeon again and again. Quality really does beat quantity when it comes to meaningful human interactions. Psychologists have even studied how many people we can actually feel connected to. It's known as Dunbar's number, and it's around 150 people. Any more and you simply cannot connect to them on an individual personal level, meaning even if your game does have a million billion...
Oh my god, wait, I need to go back to this, because this actually feels so true when you've spent so much time in, like, VR chat. Just have, like, so many contacts, and I cannot remember how they became my contacts, all of them. This is crazy. This is hilarious, actually.
To them on an individual personal level, meaning even if your game does have a million billion players, only 150 of them may be close enough to you to be meaningful to play with. The massively part of the acronym can sometimes be a bit of a false selling point. Having a million players means nothing unless you're required to interact with all a million, and if you are, that's overwhelming. Having enough players to make your game feel fleshed out and full, but not too many to overwhelm, while still maintaining those personal relationships, is a good amount to aim for. The potential for connections is massive, but until the player chooses to realize those potentials and actually interact with and connect to people, it remains potential, not realized. Many modern MMO games are designed so you don't need to interact with people, but you can if you choose to. The potential is there, but it's not required. It's this change in design, this facilitation of solo play in a genre which prides itself on multiplayer aspects that many people point to as the downfall of the genre. They say MMORPGs used to be games which needed player interaction and so forced those connections between players, resulting in long-term friendships, guilds or clans. And now taking that away, the genre is weaker for it. And this is of course subjective, but I decided maybe I should go back and play an older MMORPG and see how that handles the facilitation of solo play to gather some information on this strange phenomenon. Now, I've played a lot of MMORPGs, some for thousands of hours, some for only a few, but most of them have allowed me to have a pretty decent solo experience, teaming up with people when I wanted to, playing alone when I wanted to, and I value this. MMORPGs often advertise themselves by saying you can have your own adventure, especially the sandbox games, live your own way, forge your own path, and if I want that path to be alone who occasionally teams up, that should be something I can choose to do. If you look at many of the modern MMO offerings, you'll see solo play is not only viable, but often encouraged. Old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3 both have their Iron Man mode, literally cutting off a layer of interaction with other players by removing trading, forcing you to survive this harsh world on your own. And most of the endgame bosses can be soloed. Indeed, when I spoke to Mod Kieran and Elena about the latest raid coming out, I asked specifically if they'd designed this to be solo possible, and they had. The Elder Scrolls Online has a solo-focused story with fully voice-acted cutscenes and lots of solo instances as you travel to save Tamriel, and the world bosses are possible solo but incredibly tough. Guild Wars 2 is the same.
So, we're talking about the main mission in ESO. I played 3 missions and said, fuck it. Nah, it wasn't for me. Even though that it does give you what do you call it, level up points or whatever, attribute points. Yeah, no. I got to what's it called? I can't even remember anymore what it's called. Enlightenment. That's what it's called. I got to there without doing the story mode. Goddamn. It's just the way how I play video games, man. I don't care about your story, your main story and everything. If you have an open world, I just want to explore the open world and like I want to do all the side quests and shit. Because those are like the real like nuggets of story that I'm really interested in. They're the kind of stories that not everyone is going to pay attention to a side quest and everything. And yet a good side quest, yeah, it's hilarious when you can talk to someone who's played the game and everything and you tell them about a side quest that they just brushed off and then they're like, holy fuck, I didn't even know about that. It's hilarious.
A deep involving story with a vast majority of the game being solo friendly. And when the grouping does happen, if it happens impromptu, it gets organised behind the scenes, so just by being near someone, you're automatically working toward the same goal as them, meaning you can now work together alone. Star Wars The Old Republic is one of the better single-player Star Wars games and Star Wars stories, which just happens to be online. It takes place in an online world with other players. Even the flashpoints, team-based dungeons, will supply you with AI-controlled NPCs to complete them if you don't have a team. Now, I'm not saying these games don't have multiplayer content. Old school RuneScape has Barbarian Assault, a minigame which needs a team. The Elder Scrolls Online has its dungeons. Guild Wars 2 has the PvP battlegrounds and the fractals. These games all have content which cannot be completed solo, but this isn't usually early game or story focused. These multiplayer experiences are usually extra, in addition to the main game. Indeed, Star Wars supplying AI NPCs to accompany solo players through dungeons by fleshing out the team is a mechanic I've been a big fan of for a long time. Allowing solo players to experience what your game has poured endless hours of design into.
I wish they brought that system into ESO. So that I didn't have to wait 5 hours to do a dungeon that I wanted to do and everything. I would really like the option that, let's say me and one other person, we're waiting to do a dungeon and everything, but we needed like a healer and another DPS and shit. I could have really loved a system where the game would just give some mediocre, at least, like AI to come help us.
is a good idea. It's the same reason I really like the henchman system in Guild Wars 1 a lot, but we'll get onto this later. So we can see that modern MMOs are mostly accessible to solo players, with the choice to connect to others if you want to. But let's go back and see how older MMOs handle this. I decided to go back and try and play EverQuest 1 on Steam, the live version, not the Project 99 original. I even streamed the whole thing on YouTube. The VOD is available to go back and watch if you want to. And I'll likely stream more because I actually really enjoyed EverQuest 1. It's janky in places and it's far too convoluted in others. It relies a lot on keyboard shortcuts and typing your interactions, and target enemy is bound to F8 and not tab, and it's hard to click through things, which threw me a little, but all in all, it's a very well-made game. Now, EverQuest released back in 1999, and it's not only still going, but it's still being actively updated. It's had 28 expansions, with the 29th planned for release in 2023. That is an insanely successful lifespan for an MMORPG. It is testament to the quality of the game that it still has an active player base. Now, EverQuest is often given as an example of an old-school, hardcore MMORPG. It's harsh, it's unforgiving. You need to rely on your team to survive, and that is indeed true. EverQuest is a hard game, both in gameplay and in the meta elements of the gameplay. Understanding the UI and navigating all the keyboard shortcuts will take you some time to learn. The thing with EverQuest is there's a lot of downtime between the gameplay moments. As a mage, you need to sit down to recover your mana, and this means as a fighter you'll be waiting for the mage. There's a lot of moments where nothing is happening, and so you will talk to the players in your group. When EverQuest was big in 1999 and 2000, you didn't have Netflix. You didn't have a second monitor to watch YouTube on. You would focus entirely on the game, and therefore you would find the fun within the game, which, for the majority of the game, was talking to other people. So when I played EverQuest, I decided to read all the classes, and what really stood out to me was the description of the Necromancer class. In character creation, the class is described as: Necromancers are a very self-sufficient class and often choose to adventure alone, though they can provide great value to a group as well. The Necromancer is an excellent choice for the independent player who enjoys a wide variety of abilities. On the EverQuest wiki, the class is described as one of the best soloing classes throughout the game. Now, EverQuest has seen many changes throughout the years. I assumed maybe this was a modern update, but there's a version of the game known as Project 99 which emulates the original experience without any of the quality of life upgrades. And the Project 99 wiki entry for the Necromancer describes it as such, the Necromancer is very independent. Few support classes are able to offer anything that the Necromancer does not already have, and items and gear do not carry the same importance as they do for other classes. The Wiki Class Highlights section even says, Necromancers are one of the most independent of all classes, being designed with a number of self-only spells that certain other casters can cast on others. Example, self-only invisibility and self-only evacuation, making it a prime choice for those that plan to solo the majority of their careers. However, because of the wide variety of abilities, many not gained until higher levels, a Necromancer must constantly learn new ways to play their class. So even back in 1999, before the popular argument that MMORPGs were becoming too solo-friendly, in the game that many consider one of the grandfathers of the genre, there was a class specifically designed to allow people to adventure alone. When I played Meridian 59, considered the first 3D MMORPG, the opening crypt tutorial section has a door which requires 2 people to open. You must pull 2 levers at the same time. And while it is technically possible to do solo with almost frame-perfect inputs, it's not a required room. It simply leads to an optional boss and some low-level loot. In fact, nothing about Meridian 59 demands you team up to play. How about Guild Wars 1, considered by many to not be an MMORPG, but instead, including by themselves, an online role-playing game? How does this differ? Well, in Guild Wars 1, the world is broken down into maps, both safe or dangerous, and the only times you will see other players in Guild Wars 1 is when you're all in a hub city or a safe outpost. When you travel outside of the city, you'll only ever see yourself or any other players you specifically teamed up with while you were in that safe area. So if you leave town without talking to another player, is the game going to force you to adventure solo? Well, no. There's an NPC henchman system. By the exits of any safe map, you'll find a row of henchmen you can invite to your team, and they'll fight by your side throughout the map, acting
That's
as
cool.
regular players. In fact, once you're
What's
a
wrong with
higher
the video?
level, you can actually turn your own characters into mercenaries, meaning they will now be available as NPC supports when you play on other characters. So you're supported by your
That's
own
cool.
old characters. And it's this lack of open world player interaction which leads people to describe Guild Wars 1 as an online RPG, not necessarily a massively multiplayer online RPG. Even Final Fantasy XIV
I
is
do like
considered an
that feature.
RPG first with an MMO second, meaning it's focused more on the personal journey.
I think a lot more games nowadays to try and implement something like this, because that sounds fucking great, and it kind of sounds sad that I haven't experienced that before. Like that actually sounds really fucking cool.
The player through its story with multiplayer elements added on, such as the dungeons and the raids, and then the daily roulette allowing you to find a team quickly to receive your reward for playing. But just look at the memes. People say the end game of almost any MMO, including Final Fantasy XIV and Guild Wars 2, is fashion. Just chatting in Limsa Lominsa or trying to turn yourself into a light bulb. Extremely social things to do. Socializing is alive and well in many MMOs because the choice is there, while it's also not being forced onto.
So like some of the things that I used to do in playing MMOs and everything, these are some of the things that I played with like mini guilds. I would invite other players to like one of the houses that I own. This is an ESO, and there's this like earth cabin like place. I wish I could plug my PlayStation in right now, and I can show you what it looked like. I wonder, do I have shit? I don't think I've even recorded some of my stream where I can show you, but I had I had created this these beams that were floating in the air and everything, and they were spread out like all over the place in some like really messed up way. And we would fight, we would do duels on them and everything. And since you're up high, one hit to get you on the ground, unless if you had enough health to survive the drop, it pretty much meant game over, which was hilarious, man. Like some of those fights were like they were so fucking funny, and I wish I had like recorded those moments, man. Those were from like a really, really, really long time ago. Actually, probably not that long ago, because I don't know how long has it been since the housing option for like ESO have been. But like doing shit like that, and then you know, as if you're a part of any guild, there's obviously the well, in ESO it's the sky shard runs. So you literally get shown where all the sky shards are in a bunch of different realms and everything. I don't think we did like all of them in a day, but it was definitely like a 4 hour event and everything. And that was pretty cool. It was really good if you had just started a new character as well. You know, you can quickly collect all those sky shards and everything. Like, got you a massive boost. And since you're always running with the guild and everything, being shown where all of them were, you just get to talking with like other people in your guild and stuff. But like, yeah, like there's a lot of things. It's amazing, really, what like people have done whenever you no longer use the game. Like there's raffle systems and everything that like guilds have done. So like whether it's a piece of armor or a bunch of certain food or money or items, you know, just quick simple like raffle and everything. Our guild or like bunch of the guilds that I was in, they'd usually do one raffle every week and then a massive raffle at the end of each month or the start of each month. Um, and yeah, and then obviously, if you're in a guild, all of your guild that's in a certain faction, if they are, or if not, if your guild was split up into like multiple factions and everything, well then you'd want to fight your own brothers and everything, even though they're from a different faction. So you guys would pick out certain castles, which to like take, which to try defend and everything. And you're just working with your own guild. But when you do stuff like that, everyone else that's in the war faction will start to notice what you're doing. And so they'll start following you. And that was how guilds would war faction like guilds and everything. That would be how they would send invitations to other players and everything. Like, there's so much that you can do with the game systems without, which I think like they couldn't have really foreseen like happen with their games. It's amazing. It's really fucking good.
The solo connection player if they don't want to. This means the MM part of the acronym, massively multiplayer, seems to relate to both the player base size and the potential to interact with them in the game world at random, not the social need or demand to party up to experience the majority of the game. Yes, you can form connections with people in online games. You've always been able to. That aspect hasn't gone anywhere. You can still do that. You just don't need to do it as frequently. People often say to me, yes, I know you can still do that, but older games encouraged it, so people did it more. And that might be true, but if people are doing something because they're pushed to do it without a choice, that doesn't necessarily mean they would do it if given the choice. In modern day MMOs, we see that choice exist more, and more players are choosing to play with smaller, closer-knit groups of friends, or refer to themselves as solo players. A playstyle which has always been on some level supported, but is now much, much more popular. So have MMORPGs become less social? Not really. All of the elements to be social are still there, there's just other stuff to do as well. Unlike the downtime in EverQuest when you would sit down to restore your mana and therefore you had nothing else to do but talk to someone, you now have hundreds of other things to do, both in and out of the game. Why play an MMORPG solo? Because you want to. At that exact moment, you maybe don't want to interact with people. You maybe don't want to be relied upon.
I just remembered a moment where two players, they were role playing and everything, and they were just comedic fucking gold. They were doing rock paper scissors to see who smelt farts. Like, if you lost the rock paper scissors, then you got down on your knees or crouch and everything, and the other player would literally turn their backs to them so their faces in between, like literally looking at their ass, and then they would fart in the microphone or like simulate a fart noise through the microphone and everything. Shit like that was hilarious when like everyone's trying to be serious, but you got these two goofballs that was doing shit like this like constantly and everything. Really passes the fucking time, but like at least whenever it came to like a silent moment, yeah, it's just like when you look at shit like that, it's hilarious.
To play your role within a team.
Just memories.
It doesn't mean that you won't interact with people in the future, or wait till your mates log on and join up with them. It doesn't mean that you won't talk to someone as they cut a tree down or mine a rock next to you. It just means that you have lots of other choices other than being social to distract you. It just means you want to exist within this multiplayer world as a single player for a short time. And there's nothing to stop you from doing that, and if you play an MMO solo, you're not playing it wrong. You're just enjoying your adventure your way. As for that tweet, I think MMORPGs have always, to some players, been solo-focused online role-playing games that exist within a living world. The massively multiplayer bit was, to several players, more of the potential for social.
And even in games which like the classes are created to where they're meant for multiplayer and everything, like so you work off of someone else and or someone else works off of you, people still try solo those classes just to like see how far they can get. Like stuff like that's really fun to do as well.
Connection and not a demand to do so. And just like the potential was years ago, it's still there, it's just not as novel as it used to be. So people aren't specifically selling the games on the fact you can do that. The social players exist within guilds and clans, discords and forums. Still connected, just not chatty within the game itself. Modern MMOs do indeed have more systems that facilitate easier solo play than ever before. But this isn't driving the games to become solo only, it's simply increasing the amount of choice in how you play. There's nothing stopping you teaming up, just like the old days, with a huge group of players and adventuring around together. But unlike the old days, there's now much more choice to not do that, and people are choosing that much more frequently. But how do you play? Are you a solo-only player? Are you social with everyone? Or do you prefer mostly solo play until your mates log on where you'll team up with them? Let me know in the comments below. Another massive thank you to Guild Wars 2 for sponsoring this video. Use the link in the description to get the game and some cool free stuff. And as always, have a great day.
Almost every time that I've been a part of someone else's like kind of like game or what do you call it, guild and everything, I've only ever received the invitations. I've given out a few as well when I try to make my own what's it called, when I've tried to make my own like guild and everything back in the days and everything. So I couldn't really talk about what it's like to really like be a part of an MMO, like in the sense of like multiplayer. I mean, quite recently, I would probably say that Foxhole was the last like really main interest for engaging with other players and everything when it comes to like me playing video games lately. And obviously if you've seen those streams, some of them were role plays, some of them were, you know, I'm just like pretty much getting engagement just from like doing the shit that I wanted to do anyway. But because like people have their mics hooked up and everything, you know, it's just like you can become a part of something a lot bigger than what you can do on your own and everything. So like training to be partisans and stuff like that, go behind enemy lines and cut off the supply routes and stuff just to like deal critical blows and everything. But yeah, it's been a really long time since I've actually like been able to play a fantasy like MMO. I miss them. ESO was so great, and now I don't know, man. The game is still good. Let me just say that the game is still good. It's just without the people that I used to play with, it's less than now. And some people, some of those people, they don't play anymore because of how Bethesda kind of like messed up the systems and everything. I don't know if it's fixed, but I just felt like it was really sad logging in and hardly anyone I knew was playing it anymore. So yeah, I think I like gave a bunch of shit away to like some random newbie and everything. And I literally just told them like, if you ever come across a guild and like you start playing this game to the point where like you log in to be with that guild, stick with them. Like I do remember like giving a message or something along those lines to like a new player when I gave him a bunch of shit and everything before I logged off. That was a really long time ago. I think that was like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, it's sad, man. It's sad. It's good nostalgia every now and then remembering those times, but like it also hurts. Like just remembering that that kind of shit really happened. Anyway, that's me. I'm out. Uh, sorry for rambling so much. This is why do people play MMO solo from Josh Strife Hayes? Yeah. You can check out he he has amazing videos. Oh my god. This may be the first time me reacting to him and everything and like kind of wander down memory lane a fair bit during this. But he makes amazing content. Um Prime focus for him does seem to be about MMOs quite a lot or about well no yeah MMOs because like even if he's focusing about a certain game and everything. But yeah, his videos are amazing. They're always engaging. Clearly, he's very well presents himself and everything. And yeah, it's fantastic. Like all all way around. So be sure to check him out. Maybe give him a subscription and everything. And you can find all of his details, including the link to this video in the description, or it's probably on screen right now. Anyway, I'm out. Thanks for being here.